Before we start this episode, please be aware that we'll be discussing sexual violence, attempted suicide, and eating disorders, which could upset or trigger some people. I've provided links for support in the show notes. On today's episode of Speak Shame with Dr. Connie Corrali.
Being the only child in the firstborn generation, I was expected to set the standard for my cousins. The constant, what are the community going to say? What's it going to look like for the family? As a child, that was really hard to have that level of pressure put on me. So when my daughter was born, I was worried that the same pattern would repeat itself for her. So I left the marriage with my daughter. For me, it's been about being proud of who I am as well as who I want. Because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be who I am right now, so sitting right in front of you.
Hello, remarkable woman. I'm your host, Dr. Connie Corrali, medical doctor, life coach, and survivor of sexual violence. And you're listening to Speak Shame, a collection of inspiring conversations with remarkable women who have faced and overcome adversity. By sharing their stories, my hope is that you may find strength, connection, and hope in your own journey, and that shame itself loses its power. So sit back, relax, and don't forget to follow the show. Joining me on this week's episode of Speak Shame is the remarkable Poonnamme. Caring for others has always been her calling, with over 35 years in health and social care, rising up to managerial positions. Her journey has been shaped by service, grief, healing, and deep spiritual remembrance. Born into a Sikh family and raised between the UK and Punjab, she was immersed early in prayer, mantra, ceremony, and devotion, seeds that quietly shaped her soul. Life brought her many initiations, loss, illness, dark nights, and profound spiritual awakenings, each one guiding her deeper into her inner world and her sensitivity to energy. A spontaneous Kundalini awakening alongside years of ancestral healing confirmed what her heart always knew, that this work is sacred and must be held with reverence. As a Kundalini Shakti activation facilitator, Poonnamme walks alongside those who feel the call to reconnect with their life force, truth, and inner power. So thank you so much, Poonnamme, for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Connie, for inviting me to speak on your podcast today. Before we start the session, I just wanted to say a few words, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
So during this interview, I want it to be acknowledged that I will be speaking honestly about my own lived experiences over the years. And at no stage is it my intention to disrespect, dishonor anyone, culture, traditions, or community. Over the years, cultural expectations have changed from when I speak about my story. And we're living now in more of an integrated society. My intention is to highlight and bring some understanding of some of the issues we are about to discuss and why these things may happen. This interview is done with the purest intention from my heart, in the hope that it may reach those individuals that need to hear it and give them inspiration and hope, which over the years I found from listening to and reading other people's stories. And I also hope that this will inspire others to tell their story.
Oh, thank you so much, Poonam. And I think what a lovely way to start this episode. And I also truly believe in the power of storytelling in giving hope and inspiration to others. So thank you for starting with that. And I'd like to kick things off with a question that I ask all of my guests when they come onto this show. And that question is, if your life story was turned into a book, describe for me what would happen in chapter 1.
So I want to start off by saying that I was the firstborn girl after generations of the first boy being born in our family. And in many Asian families, preference for a first boy isn't rooted in religion. I just wanted to really clarify that point. In Sikh teachings, women and men are spiritually equal. Guru Nanak rejects the gender of hierarchy, but lived experiences and family expectations don't always reflect that religious ideal. So does that make sense? That, it's not religion that says it, it's just the family expectations. And that desire for the firstborn symbolically stems back to the concept when it's about the family continuing their legacy, continuing their name, right? Because back then in India, I'm talking about Asian families here, they worked hard for their businesses, the land, the farms that they had. And they wanted that to continue and grow. And by that was going to be passed down from generation to generation through the boy. And also the boy is perceived to look after his parents, the extended family in their old age. Because especially in societies where there is no state pension and other structures in place to support the elderly, because I think we forget that, we're looking at a different cultural issue here, with why that's happening. So where a girl as such, when she is born, she's kind of looked as a guest. So she's here, but realistically, she really belongs to her husband's family, but when she gets married. So a daughter, historically, involved significant marriage expenses. So like dowry, wedding cost, and social expectations. And as you can imagine, if you've got a family that is financially quite well off, then yeah, it's okay. But if you've got a family that isn't and struggling and maybe in poverty, it's hard because they still have to live up to that expectation of giving that dowry and making that, do the wedding. That's going to be spectacular. So that puts the pressure not only on the parents, but the extended family as well. So a firstborn daughter in that framework can feel culturally like the lineage is interrupted, even though biologically that isn't true. So coming back to my story then, when I was born, instead of bringing celebration, I brought disappointment and maybe even shame onto the family without even knowing as I entered the world. So I'd kind of come in without even knowing anything, little baby, and you kind of, all those labels and judgments, and they're already on me. So the family and the community had a lot of expectations for me being a girl. They wanted me to study, be a doctor, or something, quite a bit of a high professional. That would bring respect and to the family, which filters into the community. So due to my personal experience while I was living in India with my grandmother in my early childhood, I made up my mind at the age of, it was probably about 8 or 9, that I wanted to work with people, with adults or children with learning disabilities. I kind of didn't know what it kind of meant, but I knew that's what I was going to do. But while I was in India during that time, I didn't have any schooling. And so I was there for probably about a year or year and a half. And then when I came back to the UK, I became very ill. And I was in a coma for several weeks. And then my recovery took a long time. So again, I've had no schooling. So probably now I've probably had no schooling for probably just under a year. But when it was about me going back to school, realistically, I was supposed to go 2 years, below my age group. So as in to fit in, because I'd missed the 2 years of schooling. So I would have been the eldest, but two years down. But because of everything that had happened, I still had the bond with my peers in that year that I should have really returned to. And myself and my family spoke to the school and they took that into consideration. So I was actually allowed to just slot back in to my class. So it was going to be easier because all the rest of the drama and trauma that had happened, with me being away in India, being ill and all that. So that was great on one side because I just slotted in and there was people that were familiar to me, but it also had its own challenges because I was at the bottom of the class and I needed special support, and I was seen as a low achiever. Growing up, I wasn't getting the grades that was expected of me by my parents, my family, and the constant, well, you've got to study, you're not going to be a doctor, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a professional, you need to do that, I wasn't performing at that level, and my grades were clearly showing that that wasn't going to happen. And the other thing was that the constant, what are the community going to say? What's it going to look like for the family honor, because you're setting the standard. And so as a child growing up, that was really hard to have that level of, pressure put on me. So when I announced that I wanted to work with people with learning disabilities and go into the caring profession, this caused a big conflict with my parents and my family. Because being, again, like I said before, being the only child and the firstborn generation, I was expected to set the standard for my cousins and my peers that were going to come in, so that they've got somebody that they can aspire to. Like, oh, but she did it, so you've got to do better. You've got to get there because, look, she's that. So there was that. But obviously me saying, well, actually, I want to do that, kind of changed the whole ball game for everyone. And also because I'd said I wanted to go into the care work, especially with adults and children with learning disabilities, that already carried a stigma within our own community. So having faced, with that challenge, my auntie stepped in and she said that she would support me while I could go and live with her. So that's what I did. I left home and I stayed with my auntie for 2 years, where I did a diploma in health and social care. This is a bit, it's a bit difficult for me to talk about this next episode.
Yeah.
So just bear with me.
Yeah. Take your time. Take your time.
So when I was 17, I was sexually assaulted by someone known by the family. And I was in a house full of people, and he followed me into the toilet where the incident happened. He walked out of there, and I remember standing there just cold as ice and just numb. I wasn't even crying because I was just in shock. Like, what has just happened? I had to compose myself and walk back into a household where there was laughter and celebrations going on. And I also had to face him and be next to him where family photographs were taken. And it was a really, really difficult time. I wasn't able to tell anyone because I was too scared. And also, I didn't trust anybody to say that. So I plucked up the courage I think it must have been about a week or a week and a half later when we got home, to tell my mum. And I remember her listening to me, and she seemed really detached and cold almost. And then her coming up to me and just silencing me and putting her finger in front of my mouth and just saying, just stop, because she didn't want to hear it. She found it quite hard to believe that who it was, for a start. And then obviously I was asked the question, well, did you do anything to provoke him? Did you flirt? Did you do anything to give any indication that may have led him for this incident to happen? And that's when the tears just started to flow. because I'm looking at my mum, but I'm actually this is what's being said to me. Because all I actually wanted was to be supported and held and listened to and believed. It was really hard. Sorry, I'm just trying to compose myself. It was really hard. And this is the first time that I'm actually talking about this subject in a public domain, so to speak. So I stopped the tears, I wiped them away, and I remember getting up and just wiping them away and kind of blocking it out of my head. Literally just, I don't know, like, oh, well, did that really happen? Just blocking it. And it must have just archived and gone straight somewhere in my brain. And it literally, and I know this sounds absolutely bizarre to people that may be listening to this, but I didn't even know that the human brain was capable of doing it, burying something so traumatic and deep, and then forgetting about it's done, locked away. That's it. Done. But what had happened was I hadn't really dealt with it because I started to feel quite low in mood and just really struggling. And then I think after a few weeks, I attempted to take my life. And this failed. And I found myself in a situation where I had to keep quiet yet again and to bury this guilt of trying to take my life because of, it's not really the kind of done thing, really. And I just really want to stop and pause right here with what I've just shared. And the reason why I want to pause is because I want to just speak about expectations. So this was hard. There was anger and resentment towards my parents and family, definitely. It was hard growing up, not having anyone to speak to, trying to live my life as a firstborn British girl and having to fulfill that cultural expectation of all the roles that they needed me to fulfill. But that anger that I had and resentment that I had, over the years, I have understood and learned that all my parents and family were trying to do was fulfill their own roles within the culture and what was expected of them back in India, and for them to carry those roles on. But that's taken a long time for me to understand that. But I do. Because they didn't know any different. So how would they know how to support me? Because that's all that happened, when life was in India. But this was different. They had come here and I was the first generation being brought up. My friends, people, my peers having choices, freedom, being able to do what they want. It was a different lifestyle, so it was hard, but they didn't understand that. But I get that. I get that now. I didn't at the time. And then I just want to go to the sexual assault. Evidence shows around 80 to 90% of perpetrators are known to the victims. I'm sure you're aware of this as well. So telling my mom and her silencing me, that hit hard. But I didn't know that at the time, that's how high the rate was. But obviously, that there's a pattern because it's usually just somebody that you know. But with her silencing me and not really listening to me, I felt let down. I felt that she didn't love me. I felt, what kind of mother can dismiss such an action? But again, over time, I have learned to come to understand, how could she support me when she herself didn't have a voice? She didn't. I've only understood this now. And if my mum was here right now, I'd love to give her a hug and say, Mum, I'm sorry for having those feelings then. But I didn't know. I've only come to understand that now.
Yeah.
So I understand that, because she herself was living the life of being subservient, of an Indian wife, and the kind of things that she needed to or wanted to speak about that happened to me, she wouldn't have been able to, because she herself would have been silenced. And then where would that have put her? And then, so I suppose it was just cut it, that's it, deal with it, get on. Because probably, I know, she was hurting deep down, but helpless. And also sexual assault is a big taboo subject in the Asian culture as well. So it's not something that you can just bring up, raise lightly. And again, I really want to reinforce the fact here that I am speaking about my journey years ago in the 1980s and 1990s, right? Things have changed now, but I'm talking about back then. And I really need people to anchor into that throughout the whole story. Because, like I said, things have changed now. I also want to speak about the attempted suicide. I did feel really low because what had happened. And I think it was probably an accumulation over the years of you're not good enough, you've not performed well, not taking into account that actually I didn't have schooling for 2 years. So how was I going to perform well? And that expectation that you've got to speak like this, dress like this, be like that, behave like that, all that, just like a layer, just over time, from when you're a little child, girl growing up, same thing over and over and over. I suppose you just get buried with the whole thing. So the sexual assault was, that was it. I think my mind, my body, struggling with that. And I really felt neglected. I just, if you don't mind, at this point, I'm going to put my glasses on. So I used to just want to bring some facts in here, really, because I worked as a social worker within the mental health team, so I'm aware of mental health issues. But I just want to, the suicide and mental health stigma around culture, in the cultural text around Asian communities in the 1980s and 1990s, that the research in community mental health work in the United Kingdom has consistently shown that suicide and mental health were highly stigmatized and often avoided topics in many South Asian communities, including the Sikh community, particularly in the 1980s and 1990s. And also, there's further evidence regarding risk patterns and cultural pressures that the young Asian women, usually around the ages of 15 to 35 at that time, were reported 2 to 3 times more likely to self-harm than non-Asian women. Attempted suicide rates were reported to be higher among South Asian women, particularly in adults. And researchers link these patterns to a combination of cultural and social pressures, including family honor, which is what we say is izzat, conflict between traditional family expectations and growing up in Britain, and a gender role expectation and restrictions, and being alienized and identity tension. So, this isn't something that I'm kind of saying from myself. It's something that is factual as well. You know, it's statistics as well.
Yeah.
So you can see why that I wasn't able to tell anyone with all these now that this data has been collected. So then moving on from that, I turned 18 and I learned that I was to have an arranged marriage. I tried to speak about my feelings and about the whole thing, how I felt about it. But again, this was an expectation for me. I wasn't studying, I wasn't doing a degree, I'd finished my course, there was nothing else. The next step was to get me married. And again, that was hard. But, that was the expectation at the time. So when I now speak about this part of my life, there are certain chapters of my marriage that are too painful and hard for me to reopen. So I'm only going to share parts of my story, if that's okay.
That's fine, yeah.
So my relationship, it was volatile in more than one way. On the outside, I had a lovely life. I had the house, the cars. I was a professional. I had worked up my way up into management positions, and I'd even won an award for one of the companies that I was working for that was recognized nationally. And it was then also recognized by the local authority, where they then implemented the findings into their 5-year plan. So, yeah, I was out there. But however, I was still living two lives. I was the Western professional on the outside, brave, outspoken, organized, career-driven. And I also started to study for a degree, which was another, the shame factor going back to what had happened. So, but then there was also the other version of me where I was at home, the traditional Indian subservient wife, not really speaking about my feelings, looking after my husband's family and fulfilling the expected roles of an Indian woman. So when my daughter was born, and while she was growing up, I was worried that the same pattern would repeat itself for her. And I remember on my wedding day, I was so sad and I was crying. And I turned to my auntie while my mum was there and I said, I don't want to do this. Don't make me do this. I just don't want to do this. And she turned around and she just looked at me and she said, well, we had to do it. We didn't have a choice. So you just need to just get on with it. It's just,
Yeah.
And again, that was really hard to take because you're there as a woman, as a female at that time, and you just want that hug and that cuddle and that, oh, okay, that's fine, okay, if that's what. But again, I've got to go back to the point that the anger was there then, but I understand now they weren't able to do anything. What could they do? And then the thought of my daughter having to go through that and her being in that similar position and her turning around and saying what I said to my mum, her saying that to me in years to come, knowing that I could have but didn't or chose not to do anything about it. It's like it ignited this fire inside of me. But I actually didn't know what to do. I didn't know. Well, what do? I feel this way, but what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to change that? And then it was during one of my roles, in my managerial roles, I was called into the office by my manager and she'd been looking at my records and she said, and it was January. And so she said, I've been looking at your records. You've not taken any annual leave. So you need to start taking your annual leave or you're going to lose it. And I remember looking at her straight and going, yeah, that's fine. Not a problem. And I walked out. Because it didn't batter an eyelid. And then a couple of weeks later, she called me back for our meetings. And she used to have a desk and there was a table. And we normally used to have the meetings this end of the room. And we were that side, and there was tea, coffee. Yeah, and she was, oh, yes, sit over here. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Kind of thing, sit down thinking, am I going to get a promotion or something? So, oh, I've done really well here, pay rise. And as I sat down, she grabbed, and it's like etched in my heart. She grabbed both of my hands and she looked straight at me. And she said, I believe you. Whatever you tell me, I believe you. And my heart just started to race, like my heart was just going like this. And I could, that sick feeling that you start getting in your stomach. And I don't know what was going on. Probably my blood pressure went up or low. I don't know. Something was going on physiologically in my body. And I just felt this eruption of feelings. And I started to cry. But then there was all these thoughts that were running in my head thinking, yeah, but she's going to believe what all of the really? Yeah. No, it's easy said than done. So I looked at her and I went, what? What, everything? If I tell you everything? Like literally thinking, this woman's going to get a bit shocked, or because you kind of read people's body language, don't you? And you kind of know that, is it just surface stuff or is this really meant? And I think I was doing the testing here, like, yeah. Well, we'll see, because the barriers were still up, And she again looked straight at me, held my hands, and she went, all of it. I believe all of it, and yet I hadn't said a word. And that's where I feel that my life started to change. She listened to me without any judgment or pity. She just listened and she believed everything that I said. I never had that before. Like, she took it, she listened, she didn't question it, she didn't act in like shock, horror. She just held the space and let me talk. And later on, I asked her, what made you say and do what you did? And she said, because what individual works, doesn't take any annual leave? I noticed that you hadn't taken anything. I'm thinking, there's something not right here. But calls me in and tells me, gives me an ultimatum, you take the leave or you don't. And most people are, oh my God, yeah, okay, can you start booking them in? And without anything, I just said, yeah, fine, lose it, fine, and walked out. She said there was nothing. And also she was looking at the on-call rota, the duty rota. It was always me. Oh, do you want to do that shift? I'll do that shift for you. I'll do that, because I was just constantly trying to work, get distraction. Okay.
Yeah.
So she added those things together and thought, there's something not right. No normal individual will do that, really. And so she genuinely wanted to offer me that opportunity to speak about what's going on. And obviously I did take it because I was meant to. She was the person that I was meant to do that. So I feel that she was the big catalyst of changing my whole trajectory of life, really.
Yeah.
She kind of started to make me understand and believe that you need to value yourself. You need to honor and respect yourself. You need to stand up for yourself without disrespecting anyone or yourself. And not to bury those feelings inside, because that's all I'd known from a young age. Oh, bury it, bury it, bury it, bury it. So I didn't really know what it felt like to speak, have a voice, speak out. There's this lady, what was I? In my 20s now? When, this had happened. And then that's when the decision came, I think, that the biggest challenge was that I needed to do this and break the cycle for myself and my daughter. So I left the marriage with my daughter. And this had its own challenges because, again, the shame, the guilt. I, being a woman, had left him. I had brought shame onto the family, the community by doing this. So it was like, gosh, that label again, kind of thing, you know. So by now, my mum had passed away, and I turned to my dad and I disclosed every personal information about my unhappiness in the marriage and for my reasons for leaving. And when I say that I disclosed everything, which probably as an Asian woman, you would never say those things to your father. You just wouldn't. But I did. And my dad gave me his full support. My dad carried, but by that, my dad carried his own burden and struggles that he had to face from the community and the family for supporting me. Because as far as everyone was concerned, I had brought shame onto family, the community, and that he shouldn't really be supporting me. And again, I'm going to reinforce the fact that we are talking years ago, not in the present tense. You know, things were very, very much different then. So this is a big, bold step what my dad did for me. Once I'd left, my priorities had changed. I stopped studying for my degree, even though I was 1 year away from qualifying. I stepped down from my managerial positions and I focused and dedicated the next 17, 18 years of my life to my own self-healing and my daughter. The self-healing journey, that was hard. The shadow work, the old patterns, it was tough, Connie. I can't even tell you how tough it was. But over time, when I've spoken to people of aspects of my life, people have said, oh, you should maybe write a book or share your story. But again, it was about that shame factor. Well, God, no, and also who would want to hear my story? I didn't have that self-worth really in me, even though I'm doing the healing work. And even though I'm on this journey, there's certain aspects that kick in, trigger in, that make you think, oh, I'm not worthy of that. No, who'd want to do that? But yet, in my darkest days, I actually took inspiration from others, people's stories, women's stories, but couldn't imagine myself where they were, but they inspired me anyway. They gave me that hope that I can stand up on my own 2 feet. I can do this because other people did it. I can do it. It's just listening again and again to different people, different challenges, knowing that you're not on your own, knowing that these things that you've gone through and experienced, it's not unique to you. There are other women, people, men even, that go through similar things, that you're not alone. And I never thought that I would actually be able to sit and be doing this with you one day when I was back then listening to those inspirational stories.
And I want to thank you so much, Poonam, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. And I'm sure my listeners do as well. Thank you so much for your courage, because I know that so many women, when they listen to this story, will be able to relate, maybe not to everything, but to parts of it. But you are going to be the one that is providing that hope and that inspiration to others. So thank you so much. It really means a lot. And You talked about, if I just sum up, we talked about this being the first chapter in the journey into healing. You talked about being born into a Sikh family, but you gave that distinction between religion and culture. So thank you so much to explaining that to me and to my listeners as well. And then you mentioned expectations and the expectations that you've gone through throughout your life. And I want to thank you again for sharing your traumatic experience of sexual assault, but then also having that understanding for your mum that you've learnt now about where she was probably at the time listening to your story, but also recognizing how difficult that was for you at the time, and then the anger and the resentment that comes from not being heard and not being held. And then later on, you talked about the arranged marriage that you had, and actually how, when you had your daughter, this was then the catalyst for you to realize that actually, I don't want this for my daughter and I want to do something, but not knowing at the time. And I want to pay credit as well to your manager, who you said took you aside and was able to pick up on the fact that not taking annual leave was not something anyone did, and gave you that space, listened to you, gave you empathy, was just not judgmental. So thank you to her, but really, really thank you, Poonam, for sharing that chapter of your life. And you started talking about your healing journey. So I'm going to just move on to the next question. I'd love if you could tell me more about your journey from there and what led you to where you are today.
So when you ask me that question, there's a vision that pops into my mind. And it's years ago while I was in the marriage. I had a breakdown and I was speaking to the GP, who was an Asian GP. And I remember her telling me that you need to release this trauma you have, or your body won't able to cope. From what she could observe and see, and what I was telling her, that I was in this constant fight, flight mode, survival mode. And that my adrenals, I remember her saying, your adrenals, they're not going to be able to cope. They're not going to be able, it's not sustainable. The human body isn't made for that, to constantly just be on the go. There's going to be a burnout. But that was 27 years ago or more. And that was the first time I ever heard of this concept. And I dismissed it and carried on because I didn't understand it. I didn't know what that meant. It was like, well, it's just GP saying whatever medical jargon, and just dismissed it. Sorry, Connie.
That's all right. I'll take notes. I'll take notes for them, just for my own improvement.
And then life continued to give me its challenges, and I carried on battling on. But then another version happened to me where, because these challenges were continuing to happen, I didn't know how to deal with it. So I started to self-harm. And one of them was where I started to binge eat. So I was eating and eating and eating, and I gained so much weight. And I think I was trying to really think of what did I get to? And I think it was about 18 to 19 stone. That's how much overweight that I had got. And I remember a comment, we were at a wedding, and even though I was overweight, I'd got my weight up, because I've always liked to, do my hair, my makeup, and, I'm a bit of a bling girl, So I'm there, thinking, I'm looking hot. And then this little kid comes up and calls me fatty auntie. And I remember everybody looking at me, and I tried to think, what was it? But I don't know. But something triggered something inside of me when he said that. So I went the other way. So I stopped eating, became bulimic, fingers down the throat. And this caused me severe pain to my mind and my body. But I felt I deserved it. That pain that I was causing myself, it gave me a sense of control. And odd as it seems, a sense of self-connection to myself while I'm doing that self-harm. And so not only was I doing all that, but I was exercising. I'd gone into I don't know what I'd gone into really. I'd get up at 2 a.m. and I'd do exercise videos for about 2-3 hours, like 2 a.m, exercise, go to the gym, constantly at the gym, go for walks, as well as all the rest of the things that I was, trying to, lose the weight. My lowest weight that I recall was 6.5 stone. So I'd gone down to 6.5 stone. And I think that probably was, I was trying to think of this actually. It wasn't even a year. I think it was over about a 6-month period, 6 to 8 months, probably. It was quite a short period really, where the weight had just started to drop off. And my gums were bleeding. My teeth were getting loose. My hair was dropping out. And I remember doing this with my fingers and the skin just peeling back from my hands. And I'd feel dizzy and all the rest of, stuff that was going on. I didn't care. I didn't care what was happening to me because it gave me pleasure. And I know this sounds, and it's a really raw subject, but it did, because I didn't know how else to channel it. I didn't know what to do. From there, I just want to fast forward to when I had left the marriage. I was really low. I couldn't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was kind of hiding at my friend's house for 2 weeks. And one of my friends came and she put in front of me, her and a partner, they came and placed alcohol, wine, whatever, and various forms of drugs. And they meant no malice by it. They literally came and said, here you go. We can see you're hurting. We don't understand how to support you. We can't get our head around the whole thing of what's happened, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Yet they didn't know the whole story, but they were just struggling to help. And so they said, you've gone through a really difficult time and, just take the edge off things, man. Just chill out. Just relax. If you don't want to go on antidepressants, if you don't want to go on medication, have this. And I remember looking down. I don't even know what the substances were, to be honest with you. But I remember looking at them, and I remember looking at the alcohol. And mentally, when you can visualize that you're standing there at a crossroads and you're there and you're thinking, right, okay, I get what they're saying. And yeah, I'm really hurting and I'm in a lot of pain right now. And yeah, who's going to blame me if I start drinking and start taking drugs? Because, I've got a justified, validated reason for turning to this, doing this. But I also knew if I took that road was going to take me to addiction. I knew that I wouldn't be able to get out of that. This wasn't a temporary thing. This was going to totally change the whole course of my life and my daughter's. Then the spiritual side kicked in. I was very fortunate that during my era, my dad was very open-minded and regarding spirituality. So he had taught me about other faiths, religions, energies, and the importance of prayer, meditation, which became a part of me that I always did anyway. So it was a daily part of me because he'd instilled that in me. So this was a big part of me. It never left. So I remember looking at that and these thoughts, coming in while, all this is going on and they're talking and all these things, decisions, and that's when I decided to say no to what was offered to me. And also at that time, as I said no to them, later that night, I remember during my meditation, prayers, whatever you want to call it, when you're connecting to your higher self, divine source, again, whatever you want to call, saying, but you're a part of me, I'm a part of you. And I know that I've gone through what I've gone through, but I've never, how can I say this? I've never badmouthed the divine. I've never said anything to disrespect. I've just taken everything in, no matter how hard, may have questioned why. And now I don't know if I can handle this, but I've never said anything that would be of a negative to the divine ever. And I remember really connecting in there and thinking, you've got me this far and I've taken this step for my daughter. There is no way that you will leave me now. You've got me this far. It ain't going to happen. That disconnection can't happen. So my faith or belief in the spiritual side of things, because like I said, my dad was so open-minded that it's not one religion, that yes, obviously I've got the religion that I'm in, which I deeply love, respect, and honor. But there's other modalities and other things that I also take from the teachings and lessons and connections also. And that's a gift that I'll always be thankful to my dad for. Because, he was one of a kind at that time to be that open-minded. So I'm always grateful for him for.
No, don't apologise. Take your time.
For giving me that gift.
Yeah.
So I just had to surrender to what was to come. And that surrender led me down a long path of 17, 18 years of self-healing. And the GP that I spoke about earlier, who said about you're in survival mode and your adrenals ain't going to be able to cope with this, blah, blah, blah. Yes, she was right. Because I developed issues physically, mentally, in my body. I was in and out of hospital. I was under various consultants. I've got various labels and diagnoses attached to my name. I was given strong medication to keep me able to go to work, keep me functioning. But I have to give credit to every employer and every manager that I've been in, that they were really good. Because each time I moved jobs because of my situation, I had to explain certain parts of my life to my manager, employer, when I'd been offered the post. And they'd always been very supportive. So I've now got loads of labeled now with disabilities. And this was really impacting me physically and mentally with my health. And I'm a single mum trying to keep down a job, doing my healing as well as all the rest of the stuff that was already out there as well that I'm trying to deal with, raising my daughter. And I was barely keeping it together. And I remember coming home and I used to be so fatigued that I'd pick my daughter up And I'd just go and say, I'm just going to just have a sleep, just give me 5 minutes. And I'd go into such deep sleep. And you probably know this when you get really bad chronic fatigue, that once you're out, you're out. You can't wake up. And she'd be there trying to get me up. And I was fast asleep on the sofa. And she'd go to bed hungry because I wasn't able to feed her because I was asleep. And by the time I'd woken up, I'd find her lying on a bed, curled up in a uniform where she hadn't eaten because I was trying to survive. Because my body was in such survival mode. I'm still, still stuff in there, it's now manifesting in the body through diseases, through other stuff that's happening. So I thought, I remember that time very vividly, seeing her with a school uniform on and not eating, just curled up on that bed. And I thought, nah, I didn't do this to do this. I gotta do something. Come on, like get that inner strength back again. So I started to meditate, pray, watch inspirational, motivational speakers, read self-healing books, started to practice various modalities. And that's when I realized that I had really now started my self-healing journey. And then synchronicities started to happen. I started to kind of like visions, and sensitivity to energy became quite strong for me. And things that I dreamed about that I thought I could never do, I started to. And I started to meet new people, aligned with different people. Things changed. I went on retreats that absolutely changed my life. I started to shed things that no longer served me, but really letting some belief patterns and understanding. And I think that's what I spoke about earlier, is when, that understanding of my mum, my dad, the community, my family, that blame, that anger, that resentment. Over time, you begin to understand, man, it was something, what we spoke about earlier. So yeah, letting go of that. But let's not forget that we still had the dark night of the soul. Man, did I have some challenging times still in that healing journey. It tested me to limits that I never thought it would, because you kind of think healing's going to kind of be love and light. But actually, I think what we forget is that we have to address our shadow self. We have to really look deep within and face those issues, those things that you've really shoved under the carpet. Because until you don't, you're just suppressing it, and it's kind of, I want to say it's superficial, but it's not. It's like, I don't know, the image of the skin's coming, you've got the skin and it's got all these various layers, right, until you get right down to the deep. So it's like that healing. It's almost like an onion, peeling the layer by layer, layer by layer. And during those times, there might be something that comes up, but you kind of turn the other way and, let me deal with that one because that's a bit more comfy, because you don't want to look at that one. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I've done it. But right? But it took me there, and that was hard. And even in those times where I thought, I can't do this, somehow someone was always there to pull me back up. It always, something, a situation, a circumstance, a friend, anything, a book, a quote, something that would just ping me back out.
Yeah.
So then that kind of took me over the years, where I then trained in various modalities. I did healing sessions for people and tarot readings. And I kept receiving suggestions from people that I should go into healing work. So last year, after completing my Kundalini Shakti activation training, a website was created, Jagat Sacred Energy. But that was quite difficult as well, because it was the fear of judgment. Oh, what are people going to think? What people, family, community, what's she doing? That whole thing. This isn't the thing that we do, our community, but not only just community, but others as well, everyone else. And because up till now, I kind of led quite a low key level life. Didn't really have social media, but wasn't on social media, just very low key. So there wasn't, to literally go from, behind the curtains kind of thing to going, hey, that was quite hard. And so that had its own challenges. Cost me, it really did. That was one of the most difficult decisions that I needed that I made. But I had the people that love, adore, and respect me, that are around me, that believed in me, that pushed me to say, you can do it. Go for it. It's your time. Do it.
Yeah.
And then that's where I am here today.
Oh, amazing. You mentioned in there earlier about how someone said you should write a book, and I second that motion. I think we need to get listeners to start a campaign, because you've taken us on all the highs and the lows. And in this part of your journey, you took us back to the time where you said binge eating was a way for you to cope, but actually that trigger moment of being called fatty auntie, you remember, at a wedding, sparked something in you. And then you talked about going the other way, so with bulimia, and you said fast forward then to your healing journey, that crossroads moment, and you describe it so clearly. I can almost feel like I'm there, where your friends are trying to help you and they're giving you this option of alcohol and various drugs, because after leaving your husband, they can see how much you're hurting. And so I thank you for sharing the spiritual awakening. You always had these spiritual practices, so maybe a spiritual reawakening or whatever you'd like to call it. But the fact that you were able to see these different paths and make that choice to not go down that route, and then surrendering, as you said. And I think it's really interesting how you talk about your healing journey, because I think sometimes people think, oh, it's just you do X, Y, Z and you make it to the end. But actually, it's not a linear process. And there were lots of challenges and lots of pivotal moments. And you talked about that moment with your daughter in the uniform. And I can completely imagine how that can spark that desire to get more help. And I want to say as well, thank you to your father. I know he's no longer with us, but you talked about how he was open-minded and how he taught you about different religions and spirituality. So thank you to him. And it leads me on, and you've spoken a little bit about this, but I just wanted to ask you how you feel that your experience has shaped who you are today.
Okay. But who I am today, I'd say it's how it shaped me is it's made me stronger mentally, emotionally, physically, even though we'll go back to that physical point in a moment. It's enabled me to have a voice that I can speak about what I trust and believe in without any judgment and the fear of repercussions, to be heard and seen. And I think that's quite a biggie, really, because A, as a woman, and B, coming from the culture that I come from and from that era as well, to actually talk about some of the things that I've spoken about. So that's quite powerful, I feel. I feel like I've been able to step out of my comfort zone, which I never thought I'd able to do. Never. This is a big stepping out of my comfort zone, Connie. This is like, woo! This ain't just like a step out of my comfort zone. This is like just taking this big, I've been so like, oh dear. But it's made me a better version of myself that wasn't able to come out. It's always been in there somewhere, but through the learning, it's come out where I am. It's actually made me realize what does matter and what doesn't matter. We worry and put all these things into people, think what he said, what she said, with those stories, but actually, does it really matter? I was trying to think of that quote. What is it? What other people think of you is none of your business. I think that's the one, which is true, isn't it? So you need to kind of make peace with that. But that's a hard one because, we all worry about, oh God, what did she say? What did he say? So I think that, but I'm working on it. I think as we all are. And it refocused my energy and alignment to things and people. And it made me help find my soul family, my tribe, the community of people that I vibe with, that gel with me, that understand my journey to a certain extent. But the other side of me, my spirituality, the other aspects, the other personalities that not everybody sees, but you just then end up clicking because you've got that freedom to just be able to, meet people and make those friendship and connections with. But also for me, it's been about being proud of who I am as well as who I was. Because if it wasn't for her, that version of me all those years back, I wouldn't be who I am right now, sitting right in front of you. So I'm proud and I honor her for getting me here. And I really, really value my journey that I've been on, despite it being a roller coaster ride without the seatbelt on, hanging on with my bare fingernails. That's the vision that just came to me then. But
Yeah. That's a great description.
It was like, and then, it even continued further that I went on a spiritual pilgrimage in December last year for 3 weeks to Nepal and India to understand and embody the further teachings around the Kundalini Shakti energy and working with the Divine Mother, Lord Shiv. Which, that was an experience of a lifetime. Absolutely. That was incredible. And absolutely, that was a lifetime. But what happened was when I came back, I was admitted into hospital twice in 1 week, emergency admissions. And then the second admission, I was in hospital for over 12 days. And I'm discharged home and I'm currently not at work, so I'm not working. I'm still in my recovery from what's happened from my admissions. But during that time, this time, what I'm currently in and have been since I came back and with the admissions and in recovery, again, it's that going through the dark night of the soul again, facing shadows, facing things that I didn't even know that were in there. And it's like, are you kidding me? I've done 17, 18 years, and I've just done a quest, a pilgrimage to this sacred land, temples, met with gurus and teachers that are such enlightened souls, been and sat in places where the normal general public aren't allowed to go. I've had the privilege and honor to do that. And I thought I'd done all that, like, yeah, cool, yeah, I've done the healing. Yeah, I've done that, because trust me, that wasn't an easy ride when I was in India. Those practices, they were hard. But I still needed to work on myself, still needed to face certain stuff, still needed to address issues that were so deep, Connie. They were so deep that I didn't even know they were there. I mean, is that even possible? Obviously it is, right? And they all came to the surface, and I've had to sit with them on my own, because the room that I'm in, it's, I'm mainly kind of, when the first time I couldn't really walk, so very short distance, I've just really been confined to my own healing room where I've done healing for other people. I'm now sitting in my healing room, receiving that healing and going through that. And I also want to say that I'm still grateful. I'm very grateful for this experience that I've just gone through, and I am still currently going through, because when you're a healer or you're working with energy work, any form of energy work, it is important to face those shadows and work on yourself and do that inner work, which then enables you to hold that sacred space and be that facilitator for others, to hold that space with love and compassion and strong, that you don't get immersed in their journey, that you remain as that solid foundation rock while they take their journey, but you hold that space. Now, how can you do that if you've got your own stuff still mixing around in there? It's all going to get jumbled like in a washing machine. And then they're going to come out and you're going to think, oh, yeah. And then they are, I had a healing, when you look at healing work on a much deeper level, it's different.
Yeah.
So you really need to really clear that vessel yourself in order, because obviously that's what I do, as well as my NHS job, which I love. I also do this as well, but this has its own things that you have to go through. But the biggest thing is, and I've spoken about it before, it's made me understand with love and compassion the challenges that my parents and my family and the community had to face coming from their native land to the UK, trying to change and adapt to the new way of living and thinking. Changing behaviors does not mean that you're disrespecting your culture or your religion. It's just adapting. And unfortunately for me, I was the first generation to grow up facing that change, but it has given me growth and a deeper understanding of life.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you sharing what you've taken away from everything that you've learned, and how that healing actually, the journey carried on, because as you said, that you've identified now this shadow that was so deep within that you didn't know was there, and it's meant that you've had to do that healing and continue with the healing journey. And I think that's an important point for people to realize. It's not a linear process. And as you've mentioned before, but you said again, the understanding of where your parents were at and being able to now have empathy for their situation, whilst also still honoring your journey as well. So thank you for that. And with everything that you've been through, I wonder what advice you would give to someone who feels stuck in a similar situation.
Advice. From my point of view, from where I'm at, I would say it's self-belief has to come first. Definitely. That you have to believe that you can do it and that you deserve it. Self-love. You have to be able to love yourself first. Because if you don't have that, that's going to be your driving force. Because if you don't have that, life is not a straight road like that, as you know. right? And you're going to get your challenges and you're going to get knocked down. Trust me. Right? No matter, even the saints, even the gurus, even the enlightened souls, they've had their challenges. They've been knocked down. They've been ridiculed. They all have in human form, you know. But if you've got that self-belief, that self-love, which definitely has to be non-negotiable, that's what I feel, you can overcome the hurdles that are going to keep coming your way. You're not going to get stuck in that loop of going round and round the washing machine, right? You're going to be able to walk through it, pick yourself up because you've got that there. And I think advice also I would say is for people to read and read inspirational books, listen to inspirational podcasts, invest in yourself, go on a course, go on a retreat. If there's a healing modality that calls to you, go and try it. You might end up training in it yourself, or just go with an open mind because you don't know what's going to work for you. And join groups and communities that are like-minded people, and connect with your inner self, journal, visualize your goals, believe in it. But it doesn't matter. I think what we have to understand is it doesn't matter if you fall. It doesn't matter. You can get back up again and again, because that's what life is about. But you have to believe that you can do it and that you've got that love. And yeah, if you're going to ask me, is that road easy? No. Is that road quick? No. But you can do it. You got to believe in yourself. I think that's my biggest thing that I can say, because I never did.
Yeah. You are so inspirational, Poonam. Honestly, I can't state that enough. And such wise words there. Self-belief, self-love, but also, yeah, listening to inspirational content, finding the healing modality that there is for you, but also that really important point of, yes, we all fall, but we pick ourselves up and we carry on, and that is what happens in life. And so thank you for that. And you talked earlier about people who've really helped you along your journey. So that leads me on to the next question about how your journey has connected you to other people, maybe who have faced similar challenges, but it could be in general as well.
Yeah, I think that question kind of interlinks with the previous answer that I've just given, actually.
Yeah.
But I think when you start to doing these things, joining groups, listening to podcasts, or you might see something that's advertised, I don't know, a book club or a yoga class. You go and you start connecting with people, and because then that impacts on you because their way of thinking is going to be different. So it then starts to change your habit. And it's not about becoming like someone else. It's just that, okay, they've got a different perspective. So you start learning from other people because, yeah, it's great reading books and listening to stuff. But there's nothing, I feel personally, there's nothing more powerful than in life, real people, meeting them, that physical touch, that hug, that talk, that cup of tea. I love my food. Going for a meal, right? Connecting over food, just kind of where you feel supported. And then that network starts to grow and build, and that trust. And then you start to open up. And then you start to share a bits about yourself, your journey. And it just opens up other things that you probably didn't even know that were there. And also the power of social media. I mean, I'm not really social media person. My platform's probably only Instagram. But, through that platform, I met a remarkable woman, and her name was Connie, right? And, and that connection and that reaching out and speaking and becoming friends and getting to know each other, and look where it is, look where we are now,
Yeah.
sitting
Yeah.
in front of you,
Yeah.
So you can't underestimate any step that you take. It could be going to the library and meeting someone and connecting with them, and they could end up being, your lifelong friend. You don't know. You just don't know. So it's, I think it just opens up ways, so many different ways, by just changing your habits and connecting with like-minded people.
Yeah. Such an important point that I completely agree with that as well, because we can learn a lot from books and inspirational videos and content in general, but there's nothing quite like that human connection as well, and learning from others. And like you said, I think spot on. And before we get to the final question, you mentioned your Instagram account and you mentioned your website earlier. And I just thought to myself, actually, I imagine that there are lots of people who, after listening to this, are going to be like, oh, I'd be so interested maybe one day working with you. How can people find you as well? What are the best places to follow you on social media or find out more about what you do?
I think my account is linked to Facebook, but I don't really do, I'll be honest, I don't really know how to use it. It's there, it's linked there, but the best way is my Instagram account, which is at Jaguar Sacred Energy. So if they go on there and there's a link, because the other thing that I quite firmly believe is that have a read about the person. If you're going to go and see somebody, especially when it's energy work, what do? What are they all about? So have a look, have a read. It's all on there about me, what I offer, my journey. And if that resonates with you, then that's great. Just get in touch with me. I think that you just drop me an email or direct message me through Instagram and I'll get back to you. That's the best platform, really.
Yeah. I'll put that link in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
We're approaching the end, and I just want to find out from you, what do you hope listeners will take away from hearing your story?
Nothing's ever quick with me, Connie. You should. Okay, here we go. Right. So, from my perspective, it's hope, strength, self-love, self-belief, and the realization that you have the power to change your life by the decisions you make. Because when I was in that situation all those years ago, it wasn't even in my awareness. I mean, sitting here talking to you, man, that was like a distant dream. That's like me flying over to the moon. It wasn't even there. So, you can do it. And that power to share that story that may inspire somebody else, that's quite powerful. Self-healing. I'm pretty sure that most of us still need to work on our own inner child, our traumas, our stresses, our healing. So give that love to yourself. Give that time to yourself. We pour out there to everybody, but we don't take that time for ourselves.
Yeah.
So definitely, because you need to feel worthy and safe within your body and your mind. We need to nourish ourselves. And that can be through various practices, like I said, meditation, grounding, go to nature, connect with yourself, get to know and understand yourself so that you can live the best version of yourself. But I feel for me, the strongest point that I want to make across today is that it doesn't matter what color, creed, faith, nationality you are. Women have been silenced not to talk about abuse, pain, suffering due to shame that's brought upon yourself or your family or your community. This isn't just us women today. as I've touched on it before, this goes back to our ancestors, that they were in much more of a difficult situation than what we were. They weren't able to voice their pain and their opinions. They didn't have any support systems that were in place that we have now. We've got freedom of speech. We've got all platforms that we can speak. They didn't. And, I'm not saying I know people are going to think this is a bit woo-woo, but it's not. We carry that ancestral trauma through our DNA. Of course, those people that are interested in that, they need to look that up through epigenetics and do your own research. Have a look. It's out there. It's scientifically proven. We carry those traumas, those stressors from ancestors into our bloodline. So sometimes we're carrying that and it's not even ours. And speaking about some of the controversial issues that we've discussed today, by doing things like this, it's breaking that generational cycle of being silent. It's creating an understanding and awareness that we can speak about taboo subjects and be heard and supported and not judged and ridiculed and looked down upon others who may hear my story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really believe as well that being able to use our voice and to share our stories is so powerful. And absolutely, that's not something that women who've come before us have necessarily had the opportunity to do. And so, yeah, thank you once
and I
again.
also wanted to say, Connie, as well, as women,
Yeah.
let there be no comparison or competition and judgment between us. Yeah. Let's support and honor each other's journey and story, and let's rise together as a collective for our highest good. Yeah. We've all got a story. We've all gone through this. Like I said, it's universal. Doesn't matter where you live in the country, in the world, what color, creed, whatever. It doesn't matter. This thread of silence, of abuse, of pain, of shame, neglect, all cultural, everything that we've touched on. This isn't just applicable to me as an Asian woman. This is applicable to every individual that I've just named. Yeah. It is universal.
Yeah.
So why have that competition? Why be jealous of someone? Yeah. Why not support each other? Because we've all gone through it.
Yeah, let's rise together. I couldn't have said it better, absolutely. And actually, as we reach the end, and speaking of remarkable women, and thank you as well for including me in that, but I wonder if you had the opportunity to name one remarkable woman who has inspired you, who would it be and why?
Are you seriously asking me one person?
Bring on the list, Poonnamme.
Here goes, right? Well, I have to be honest. I know you've asked for a woman, but first of all, I actually want to honor my papa, who has been my dad's closest friend, and he's my second father. He's helped me grow and expand with his unconditional love. He's supported me through the darkest days. When my dad was here, they both did it together. And then when my dad passed, he's been there for me, holding that space as a father. And I have to honor that. So that's to my papa, who I love dearly. And then, the first person that comes to mind is my line manager. Because when she took my hands and said, "I believe you," that rocked my world, man. That opened up. That changed my life. So I will always be grateful and honor her for doing that. in saying that. And second of all is my daughter. Because of her, I took the steps to change and break that generational cycle of being unheard and not having a voice. Thirdly, I want to say all the women over the years that have come, gone, and remain in my life today have been my biggest and greatest teachers, not only through love and compassion, let me add. It's all, they've put me through some very challenging and difficult times, what I learned from them. And then I have to, and I can't not mention you, Connie. I have watched you on Instagram, and I was in awe of you taking such a big, bold step of launching your website and your Instagram and talking about the taboo subject and the subject of women being kept silent. Because like I said, it's something that touches every woman across all continents, cultures, and ages. Yet our silences are made to make us feel shamed and ridiculed and judged. So that's why we don't speak. But with you giving that beautiful, safe platform with honesty, integrity, sharing your own story and launching what you've done, it's that ripple effect. Because you know what, Connie, it isn't about having a zillion followers. It isn't about having 1,000 likes and shares or whatever you want to call it on Instagram or social media or whatever. It's not about that. This is about touching, even if it's one soul, even if it's just one person that may take inspiration from my story that they're listening to, your story, or the other guests that you've had on your podcast and your platform, listening to them, if it changes something, inspires anything, big or small, it doesn't have to be big, anything. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. And sometimes you're there doing the work in the background and sometimes you don't even get the recognition because we're so used to being rewarded and recognized. Oh yeah, look, oh yeah, I've done this. Oh yeah, and everybody's like clapping and, and yet actually the harder work some people are doing over there, they're just getting on with it and they don't even get recognized. But you know what? That's what matters because you're doing it from a place of sincerity, integrity. And that shines out much more further. The energy of that goes out so far, wide, beyond that you can't comprehend it. So thank you for being you, for doing the work that you do and inspiring people like myself and others and more to come to share and sit with you and share their story. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really do. And I'm speechless. I want to thank you so much. And also thank you to your papa, to your daughter, to your line manager, to all the women who you've learned from throughout your life. And thank you so much to you, Poonam, for being here today, for your courage, for sharing your story, and no doubt inspiring so many other women. But as you just said, even if it's just one person, and I'm sure it'll be more than one, you've made such a huge difference. And so thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Connie, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you for listening to Speak Shame with Dr. Connie Corrali, and thank you so much to Poonam for being my guest on this week's show. Please take a look at the show notes for information on Poonam's social media handles so that you can connect with her. If you'd like to join the community, head over to @DrConnieCorrali on Instagram. If you're a remarkable woman who's been silenced by shame and you're ready to reclaim your voice, then join me at my next free Shame Resilience workshop. You'll find the booking link in the show notes. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get a new episode every other Thursday. Until next time, take care.